not yet. All right, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to give a 5-minute notice, and for those online as well, I'll give everybody about 5 minutes to get settled. Please continue to enjoy your lunch if you're here in person, but we'll begin in less than 5 minutes. Thank you. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, if you would provide your attention, we'll go ahead and get started with today's event. Today's event is Best Practices in IT Program Management, and it's a co-hosted event, pardon me, from the George Washington Technical Alumni Group and the George Washington Project Management Alumni Group. Few things. First of all, can everyone hear me okay, or which is better? This? Okay, I'll do better. I want to welcome all of you who were able to make it in person. I also want to acknowledge those of us who are joining us online. We had about 30 registrants who agreed to participate in today's event from online. Sorry you're not able to enjoy the buffet that we have here, but hopefully you have something to enjoy. And today's event is also being recorded such that it can be available for playback at a later time and a date. So just want to acknowledge all those who are joining us electronically today. Very excited about today's event. This event today kind of accomplishes a few things for the Tech Alumni Group. Some objectives that we wanted to do were to solicit information and feedback from the members who participate in our events throughout the year and provide new events that would be of particular interest to them, not just find something that would satisfy a schedule and then invite people. We wanted events that were going to be of relevance and of interest. This particular subject was one of the strongest requested events for us when we conducted our survey. So we're very happy to be able to host this event, and we're especially thrilled about our keynote speaker today. The second thing that today's event accomplishes is a strategic partnership goal of ours to team with other groups, both academic and within industry, to put together events of high quality and make them available to all of our stakeholders, all of our participants. And today represents just such an event where we're teaming with another group and actually, in a way, teaming with an industry group, an organization, as in terms of the subject for our keynote today, and making this information available to all of you to enjoy. So we hope that you find it of value, and we hope that you'll enjoy it. Before we get to the end of our events, I want to go ahead and ask that each of you agree to take the time to respond to the online survey that you will receive. Having registered for today's event, you will receive a future online survey. Please let us know what you thought of this event, and if there are things that could have been done better or things that you would like to see at a future event, let us know. And for those of us joining us online, I especially would be interested to get your comments as well. We want to increase the online experience for those of us who join us that way, and we just need to hear from you to know what we can do better. So to open things up, I always like to understand the demographics of our participants. So among those of us today, in person anyway, how many of you are current students of George Washington? A few hands, about 4 or 5 hands. Alumni? Almost every other hand. Okay, any special guests with us today? Just our keynote speaker. Okay, so speaking to our alumni, I would be interested in knowing which of you perhaps graduated with your respective programs within the last 10 years. All right, at a glance, maybe 20 hands, 25. Within the last 20 years. Okay, we're narrowing it down. I'm seeing about 4 hands, 5 maybe. Okay, 25 years. You see where I'm going with this. Who is the oldest alumni among us? As many years back as it needs. 25 years. No hands. So we're between 20 and 25. 21. Did you complete your program, your graduate program? 1973? All right. Anyone older than 73? Not age. Okay, mind you, I'm not challenging your age. All right. So the oldest alumni, academically speaking, among us was from 1973. A round of applause for joining us. Thank you. We enjoy having great depth in our participation of events. We like to see individuals continue to participate in events with the university and to continue to give back in incredible ways to the university as well. And for all of you who are still students or young alumni, we encourage you to continue to stay plugged in to this event, to these alumni groups or other alumni groups as your careers continue to move forward. Okay, so moving forward, next slide. Today's events, following my introductions, we will have an opportunity to hear from the presidents of each of the alumni groups. Now, I do know that the president for the Tech Alumni Group is here. I apologize, however, I do not know if Robert Torres has made it quite. You are here. Thank you, sir. We just did not have a chance to meet before that we kicked off. So we will indeed be hearing from both of the presidents of each of the alumni group. Following that, we will go into our keynote speakers address, followed by event Q&A. Event Q&A is going to involve the opportunity to ask questions not just about the keynote speakers' comments, but about each of the alumni organizations and maybe the application of program management and best practices within the industry, whatever your industries happen to be. We will invite members from the boards to tackle your questions as best we're able to, and hopefully we can satisfy any of your curiosities. And then finally, we'll have some closing remarks and networking. So to begin, we'll be talking to each of the presidents of the board. To begin, I'd like to introduce Brian Moran. He is the president of Government CIO, and a company where he founded himself with great success. Divisions including consulting, training, and even an online magazine. Happens, as president of the Technical Alumni Group, he was the the founder of the group, and has done quite a bit over the last 2 years to bring us to the level of success that we enjoy today. So, if you would please welcome Brian.
Thanks, Ernie. But first, let's give Ernie a round of applause because he's the one who put this event on. He's coordinated. He got the keynote speaker. He reached out to the GW project management group as well. So let's give Ernie a round of applause. Well, thanks, Ernie. First thing I want to talk about is the GW Tech Alumni. The organization coalesced around a single idea. We wanted to try to improve the value of the degree that we receive from GW. And we do this in a couple of ways. One of the primary ways is through putting on thought-provoking events, and the other ways is to try to integrate ourselves with the curriculum and to try to help act as a sounding board and to try to improve the curriculum. And then the other way is to provide a means for networking and for meeting other folks who are in the disciplines of IT and technology who want to network and grow business relationships. And I've been very fortunate to benefit highly from a network of business relationships that I've obtained through the GW alumni. And I actually, several organizations that we've worked with in my company, we've partnered up on different teaming arrangements and going after contracts. A former business partner is actually a GW Tech alumni as well. So I've benefited greatly, and the reason why we started this organization, because that benefit shouldn't just be isolated. We can actually coalesce around this as a group, and we can all enjoy this benefit. So I encourage you today to spend a little bit of time talking amongst the people at your table, exchanging business cards, exchanging ideas, what you're looking to do and what you're looking to pursue. But then I also expect you guys to mingle around before the event's over. Don't just shotgun out the door. Try to get to know the folks who are around you and get to meet everybody. This is sort of a sad event for me because this is one of my last events as the president of the GW Tech Alumni. I've actually decided to resign from it. My day job has it such where I really don't have the time to commit to it like I need to. But I've been very fortunate because great folks like Ernie, our treasurer, Kevin Ruffley, who's here, Malia Haddad, who's been our faculty advisor and also a GW alumni herself, Deborah Chungu, Robert Milhauser, and I'm really bad with names. Even though I've known these folks for a long time and they're good friends of mine, I still screw their name up on a daily basis. Anybody else from the GW Tech board? Okay. All right, so I think I've said everybody's name. Oh, and there's some folks that are on the other side of that camera as well. I know Annette's sitting there watching it from her computer. So let's everybody turn around and wave to Annette. Hey, Annette. I know there were a couple other folks who said they were going to dial. Oh, and Sunday said she was going to dial in as well. So we really appreciate the technology that we have today so that our events moving forward won't only be things that you can actually come to an event, get a free lunch out of, but if you're working and you're busy and you can't access the event, if it's a daytime event, you'll be able to access it here. You can also watch them as a recap. We have a stream that you can actually get to. If you need to access other information about the GW Tech Alumni, we have a Facebook page. a GW Tech Alumni Facebook page, a LinkedIn account, and a Twitter account. All of these are great ways to keep in contact with your colleagues and GW Tech alumni. If you have a job posting, if you're looking for a job, if you're looking for a business relationship, it's an excellent avenue for doing that. I also want to pay a special thanks to our partners in the project management group. It's phenomenal that we're able to work together and to bring both organizations and to be able to put on such a great topic. It's something that's true to my heart. IT project management and best practices in it are something that nobody in the field really follows. So let's go ahead and, you know, it's usually the thing that we start to circumnavigate and figure out a way to shortcut. But our guest speaker is an expert who's going to talk to us about the benefits of applying these practices and in order to deliver the success of actually completing a project. How many folks here have been a part of a failed IT project? Everybody who's in IT should raise your hand, right? Everybody's been involved in a failed IT project. And what were the reasons that the project failed? Schedule management? Lack of requirements? Any other good failure? Funding? Well, yeah, you're in a government environment then, yeah. Absolutely. That's a great point. So one of the comments that was just made for the folks on TV, failures tend to be on the human side and not on the technical side. And when our speaker comes up and he speaks about the best practices, undoubtedly he's not going to be focused on the technicality of delivering an IT system. He's going to speak about the human behaviors that need to be modified and the management discipline that needs to be applied in order to affect the change to result in a successful project. But I'm not going to jump into that because I'll keep talking. So let me hand it off to Robert. Robert, where are you? Oh, there you are. Robert is the president of the project management. What is your actual title of the organization? MSPM. MSPM, okay. Oh, and I'm supposed to say something. This event is partially brought to you by the friends at the Masters of Information Technology from the GW School of Business.
Thank you, Brian. That's going to be hard to follow such a great speaker. And I'm going to hide behind the podium right here because I have my sticky note of the points that I wanted to emphasize. My name is Robert Torres, and do not read that because that's a long bio. But basically, I'm from the Department of State. I'm a division chief in the Bureau of Consular Affairs in working in passport services to make sure that the bad people do not get passports, U.S. passports, or people who are not entitled to passport get passports. That's basically my function. I'm a recent alumni. I graduated last year, May 2011. Yeah, best class ever. We got Mayor Bloomberg as the keynote speaker. That was pretty cool. But basically, most of my federal career has been with the Department of State. I also worked in Department of Agriculture and in Department of Personnel Management. So I'm actually the new incoming president of the Alumni Association of the Project Management Program. And our mission is pretty much similar to the mission of all the different alumni, but this is actually my first event as a quasi-new incoming president, if we can say that. The official announcement will come sometime in May, but basically we just wanted to make sure that we partner not only with other alumni associations, but that we promote project managed principles among the alumni and to continue sharing those best practices and to create a knowledge center within the alumni. I will tell you that one of the reasons, so do we have both students and alumni? Is that correct? Okay. Well, those of you who are going to become alumni very soon, I will tell you that there's extremely a lot of benefits for joining the alumni. Unfortunately, ours is not one that you can get discounts at hotels or parks or anything like that. But one of the things that you get is professional development. And with that, one of the things that we have been doing for the past couple of years is to have events like this, webinars, sometimes with partners, which is the situation here, but also just take advantage of the expertise, whether the faculty or members within the project management community in the area, and to make sure that we get their expertise and learn more about their expertise. So one of the things that as we move forward that we're planning to do is to make sure that those webinars count as professional development units. That's a requirement if you have a PMP. So again, stay in touch so you can know about the different events that we're having and make sure that you get credit for that. As we move forward, one of the things that we're trying to make sure that we, meet this mission is to take advantage of the social media. And I know that all of you have LinkedIn, Facebook, but we're really trying to create some kind of blog to make sure that knowledge, that all the expertise and best practices reside in one single place. So that's one of the things that we're trying to, as we move forward with the organization. Another reason why you should join the organization, or if you are a member of the Alumni Association, the reason why you should stay active is obviously networking. This is a great opportunity to make sure that you interact with other people and find out what other organizations are doing. One of the events that we're planning to sponsor later this year with the Project Management Student Association is best practices on risk assessment and risk assessments. So that's something. So stay tuned with that for that. But networking is a great opportunity to just exchange ideas, to learn more, and obviously, if you're looking for a change in your career, this type of events are very good. One of the things that we're focusing on, we wanted to make sure that students, that we show our appreciation and encourage students to continue with their professional development. We're looking at scholarships, so that's another reason why you should always stay tuned with that, with alumni associations. And last but not least, fun activities. I wanted to make sure that the events are fun. I mean, it's great to have, something very formal like here. And this is great, and this is what is called for it. But we also want to make sure that we have fun events that people can participate, but also that they don't feel that it's a waste of time, that it's something that they can use in the professional development. So we're trying to partner with other organizations like PMI and make sure that we do volunteer events with the PMI chapter here in the Washington area. So with that being said, that's all I have, Brian. So that we move on to... Oh, Ernie. Sorry.
Thank you.
As I look at Ernie.
Thank you, Robert. Okay, so moving forward with today's presentation, our keynote speaker, David Offenkrantz, is the 2011 president of the PMI Washington, D.C. chapter, and he has gracefully given his time to join us today. He is also a senior program project manager with the Hewlett-Packard Company. I believe his intentions are to share with you some of the organization of PMI WDC, and maybe as he's able to add a few comments about the best disciplines of project management and maybe some personal experiences in the application of PM within his own career. So with that, I'd like you to join me in welcoming David and help him to feel welcome.
Thank you. All right. Thank you very much, Ernie. I guess I need to use this for TV. This won't work for TV, will it? No. Okay. All right. Well, as Ernie said, I was the president of the Washington, D.C. chapter of PMI last year. President-elect before that. I've been on the board for a number of years, very active in it. The topic of my presentation today is actually a little different than what Brian said. It's more about PMI Washington, D.C. as resources, but since I'm slated for 40 minutes and that won't take 40 minutes, we'll have plenty of time for questions and we can discuss any of the other things you'd like to around best practices, etc. All right, so background. We'll go into how we got where we are with the chapter and the tools available to the practitioner and then the benefits. All right. How many of you in here, I guess it won't work on the TV for me to see, how many of you in here know anything about PMI? Okay, well, that's a little more than half. All right, well, there's a global organization, and then there are local chapters. Washington, D.C. is the world's largest local chapter. We have over 10,000 members. That's pretty good. I would love to take all the credit for that, but it's a confluence of geography and timing. The federal government about 10 years ago said we want our project managers to get certification, and PMI was the best one available, so our membership has gone like this for the last 10 years, and we crested it over 10,000 this year. The organization costs $119, I believe it is, to join, and then you can join a local chapter on top of that, so it's $35 per year. There are a number of benefits as far as membership in the chapter. One of the best ones that's been stated by several people here in this organization is the same in PMI, and that's networking. You have the opportunity to meet with people in the field or who are interested in getting in the field, and you have the opportunity to see what's available. We have a number of different luncheon meetings or dinner meetings or breakfast meetings. This is just a sampling of them. Pretty much all around the Northern Virginia and D.C. area. Not as much in Maryland, but you can find a luncheon if you work at any of these government agencies or you support, wait a minute here, or you support any of those agencies, they have luncheon meetings, etc. We do a breakfast meeting downtown at the National Press Club at 14th and F or G, I think, a couple blocks from Ronald Reagan Building. You can take advantage of that one. Our monthly dinner meetings have been in Tyson's, but they're going to be in Crystal City now for the next several months. That's metro accessible, right on US 1 near Reagan Airport. So we have a lot of different avenues. In addition to that, we have all of these things that you see here. Personal favorite of mine is the golf tournament. But there are a lot of different avenues for getting involved and getting continuing education credits, called PDUs, which the gentleman referred to. And in addition, just continuing to educate yourselves in the field. Ernie did a bit of a sample, but let me see. How many of you are working in IT in some kind of project management role now? Okay. How many of you are working in IT in any other role? All right. And what do the rest of you do? Never underestimate the power of a free lunch. All right. Well, that man's honest. Anybody else? Okay. I'm sorry? Process management. Okay. I've just so I get an idea to help me in terms of what I talk about. Anybody else? Sales. All right. You can use project management in sales. Okay. Anybody else want to volunteer? All right. Man, this thing has a mind of its own. All right. That was the last one that I fast-forwarded to, so let's see here. We've pretty much talked about this. Let me talk about the two-board structure for just a minute, because that will be potentially useful in terms of your understanding. One of the challenges of being a big chapter, and think about this from the Alumni Association here in terms of your forward thinking, any of you that are on the board or interested in getting involved at some point. The problem as you start to grow is that you become focused on the day-to-day operations and don't have time to think strategically. When we started hitting 5,000, 6,000 members, the operational VPs, who are the charts on the far right there in light green, they spent so much time working on the day-to-day activities of what they're doing, they didn't have time to think ahead. So we split the board and sorry, I had them wrong. This is the vice presidents in the yellow on the left. We split the board and put the strategic thinking, forward thinking board together, and we called it a governance board. There's no judgment that one is better than the other. They are both necessary and they serve different functions. So the purpose of the strategic governance board is forward thinking about how we want to, where we want to be in 5, 10 years, how we want to serve our membership, what avenues we need to be involved in, etc. For example, webinars were mentioned. We have done webinars in the past. We did not do them this last year, but we're going to pick them up again this year. Our membership wants it, and really we have had the opportunity to provide training for project managers all across the globe, literally. We had a guy who ran with it. He would do it twice a day at 1:30 in the morning our time and about 1:30 in the afternoon so that he could get people from all over the world. It's been a great, great success. So we have those two boards set up to handle both the different aspects of what needs to be done. All right, we're not that far yet. All right. If you were all a group of project managers, I would do a deep dive into these slides, but I don't, unless somebody has a question on it, I'll go back and cover any aspect of it. Otherwise, I'll be glad to talk about what Brian said I was going to talk about, which was project management best practices if you want, or anything else during our time that we have. So, floor is open. Questions? That was quick. I have a question for you, lady in the back who said you were in sales. Why do you come to this? What is the tie-in? Do you sell in the technical field?
Possible career change. So I'm looking at sort of maybe be the interface between the clients and the techie, more consulting and I guess work in projects for consulting groups or something like that. So
Okay.
I'm looking to get networking and learn what resources are out there.
That's great. Did everybody hear that? Because that's something we can definitely spend some time talking about. Yeah. Well, all right, then, all right, go ahead.
Is PMI doing some kind of partnership with the U.S. government on promoting project management? I mean, one of the things that is happening is that there's more jobs requiring more job titles as project managers, not just IT project management. Are you doing some kind of partnership with the Office of Personnel Management or any other federal agencies on promoting that?
Okay. Remember, there's PMI Global, which is headquartered in Pennsylvania, and they have people in D.C. who are lobbying and marketing with the federal government in terms of standards. They're involved in looking ahead to what the standards for the profession need to be, and they have focus groups. They have industry and government involved in various groups, and so they're actively involved in that. As the local chapter, we have some tie-ins with that, but not on the same level. What we're doing in the chapter we call outreach, and we are meeting with executives from companies who are in the business of federal contracting or even in the commercial space that do project management, and we are finding out from them what they need us to help them train their practitioners on. So Global is taking it from a standards viewpoint, looking down the road. We're taking it from a local viewpoint, what you need to be able to do here. Let me talk about what the lady mentioned about thinking about a career change. And the gentleman in the back mentioned that most of the failures that he's seen in projects are not technical, they're people. They're bad business decisions. I agree with that based on my experience. So therefore, the career change that you're thinking about would bring a set of skills which, if I had to say there was one set needed more than anything else in project management practitioners, it would be people skills. The traditional view is that you can manage a project sitting behind your computer from your Gantt charts and your Excel spreadsheets. You cannot. It will not work. However, if you are in a very large project or program, there will often be a project scheduler, and that's what they do. But that's not the same as the program management. When you think of program management, I submit to you what you really need to think about is liaison, herding cats, expectations management, schmoozing, and dealing with the people, all of the stakeholders. Traditionally, stakeholders is very narrowly defined to the people who are paying the bill. Stakeholders is actually much larger than that. The people on the project who are doing the work are stakeholders. The person who's paying for it is a stakeholder. The users are stakeholders. There are many, many groups of stakeholders, and the hardest part of project management and the most critical part is the part of liaising between all of those various groups. I did not come up through the technical ranks. I have never coded, I have never programmed, and yet I am a program manager because I can organize, I can communicate, I can get people working together on the same sheet of music. That's what I bring to a project management role. If you have a technical background and you want to be a project manager, that's helpful. But you'll see that it's going to be a different set of skills, and the temptation is going to be to want to dive back into the area that you technically know about. Well, if you've been in the field for any length of time, the pace of change, if you don't keep your skills up, you're not even current in what was your field of expertise. So sometimes it's hard to let go of the comfort zone, which is the technical expertise, but yet program management is not based on technical expertise, comma. Having said that, I have run into this, and you will run into it if you want to get in the field or keep going in the field, that there are people oftentimes in senior positions that think that the smartest technician is the project manager. So you do have to deal with that perception. I've had to deal with that. And I have not always been successful at that. I'll admit it. But where I have been able to convince them or show them that my skill set is different than that skill set and I can manage the project even though I'm not going to design the system, then I'm fine. And if you are not highly technical, as I am not, then my success pattern has been to ally myself closely with somebody who is. And we build a good relationship. And then the two of us tackle it together. Ma'am, you had your hand up. Something you wanted to say? I heard your question, something about change management, but I'm not sure what the rest was.
I didn't finish. Could you give us some tips on change management? How do you change users' minds? How do you change your team's mind to go with your idea of where the project should go?
Leadership skills. I'm going to bring in an example, and regardless of what people's personal opinions are, just go with me for this example for a minute. Tim Tebow this year was remarkable in one aspect, that he got a fairly middling team to believe that they could win. That was leadership skills. And so therefore the comebacks, et cetera, that the Denver Broncos were doing in the fourth quarter, a lot of that was inspired by his confidence and how he led them to where they started to believe. And I'll just leave it at that. So on change management, that's where leadership skills come in, because most times when you're doing a project, you are changing something in an organization, either by introducing new technology, introducing new process, you talked about process management, or you're tweaking or optimizing, whatever buzzword you want to use, you're bringing some change to an organization. So that requires people to change their thinking. Who moved my cheese and all the rest of that stuff. So it means that the technical aspects or the process or whatever it is, the deliverable has to be good, right? But in addition, what's wrapped around that is how people work. And that's the part that takes the change management. Doing the technical part is relatively more easy. It's the changed processes, it's a changed thinking. And in the projects that I've been on that were successful, Everybody was involved. Everybody had input. So all of the stakeholders, expectations managed, relationships managed, all of that stuff. It's a whole, it's like a sales campaign. Let me give you an example. As the president of the chapter last year, we had the gentleman who's the program manager for the metro extension out to Dulles Airport. He came to our dinner meeting and he had an audience of 500 project managers. Well, of course he wants to be there because he has a message he wants to get out. I had the privilege of sitting with him at the table during dinner, and we were actually talking. He has a sales job. That's what he does. He spends all his time speaking to stakeholders and community groups, trying to get them to back this project and not to stymie it, to get them to kick in the money, to get them to vote for the various things that need to be done at all, where all the stops are going to be, all that kind of stuff. His entire job is sales. It's all relationship management and expectations management, and that's change management. He has a PMO of 60 people who are running the day-to-day activities of laying the track, building the flyovers, all that kind of stuff. And if you've driven out on the toll road recently, they're actually making some pretty good progress. His job is to be out in front of all that, dealing with the press, dealing with the community groups, dealing with the people. That's change management. That requires leadership. So that would be my response. Obviously, there's a lot that goes with it, but hopefully that's a reasonably short answer. Yes, sir.
David, my question is, from your vantage point of view, what do you think of Agile in the IT project management? Is prospect, the challenges, adoption, whether it's a fad or it's going to be the future? What's your opinion on that?
Okay. The biggest pitfall I've seen with Agile, and I've been involved in one program that was Agile with a government agency. In order to be successful, Agile demands stakeholder participation. I have seen in working with the government sometimes that they tend to want the contractors to handle it and just show up with the end product. That does not work in Agile. I have not done Agile in a commercial environment, but I've also seen commercial where they throw it over the wall and expect you to come back with a solution too. So I don't think that problem is unique to the government. But if the stakeholders are not willing to be actively involved, Agile does not work. It's just a lot of spinning cycles. So that makes it no better. That just makes it a fad. However, I think Agile has the potential for staying power, because to get the best outcome, you want stakeholder engagement anyway. So if that is what gets you to stakeholder engagement, then it's great. Go for it. But if somebody puts out a contract and says they want Agile just because they read about it and it's new and it's cool, they're not going to get what they're thinking they're going to get, because their expectations are mismatched with the reality of what it takes. Opinions are not necessarily those of the Alumni Association, but I was asked, so I'll give you my opinion based on my experience in the field.
So one of the things that I've noticed, typically the signs of a project manager who's going to fail is a guy who comes in with a set of Gantt charts, a work breakdown structure, and he says, "Here's the project, and we're gonna hit all these milestones." And then week 2, he's still trying to fumble around with those charts. And the guys who usually succeed are the ones who have a little black book, and they run around and they deal with issues, and they act as agents for clearing those issues. What are some of the other signs that you see so that folks can recognize that they're moving towards the failed side as opposed to the success side?
Well, if I had all those answers, I could charge $50,000 an appearance. Being out of touch is the single biggest problem, and that's what you alluded to. In the U.S., our project management strategy seems to be ready, fire, aim. Did you get that? Ready, fire, aim. Get started. I want to see some progress. Get moving. And that lends itself to rework and rework and rework. But if a project manager will stay in touch with what's going on, which is what I take it you mean by the little black book, who's working on what? Where are they going with it? What are the customers thinking? What are the issues that are happening? And you can't find that out unless you get out with them. Management by walking around is not a bad way to do it if you are co-located. So a little sidebar here. Virtual teams are awful. I've done follow the sun development. I had a team on the U.S. East Coast, U.S. West Coast, India, and England. And we had a management system where they do their coding, they'd check it in. The next group, when the sun came up in their part of the world, would check it out, do their work, check in, check out. It was a fiasco. That's the polite word. Because in order to really work together effectively, I need to have a face with a name. I need a little bit of a relationship. And without that, you see people stepping all over each other. Ever read emails that somebody writes assuming they thought what the perspective was of the person they were addressing, and then they discover that maybe they misread the signals, all those sorts of things? Even on the phone, you can't always tell from a person's tone of voice. Some people are more friendly than others. Yet, I understand that virtual teams are the way of the world. At HP, we do virtual teams. I work out of my house. I got dressed up to come see you guys today. All my interactions are virtual practically, but it just is harder to build team chemistry. And high-performing teams have team chemistry. Forming, storming, norming, performing. There has to be some team chemistry to get a high-performing team. And it's very difficult, and it takes longer to do virtually. So much for the little sidebar on that topic. That was an extra. But I think the biggest single barometer of projects heading towards failing is out of touch. If the project manager and the project technical leads are out of touch with what's going on, and whatever you need to do to get in touch with what's going on, do it. It will pay dividends.
David, I have a question. And before I ask my question, I want to excite the audience to maybe consider some personal experiences you've had within your respective industries, some experiences that you thought didn't go the way you would expect them on a particular project, and maybe consider forming that as a question for this event. And between David, myself, and a few others, maybe we could help address that question and add some clarity to what you may have experienced. Pardon me. While you think of that, David, back to PMI WDC. I know that participation is not specific to the IT industry, that there are a number of different industries that participate in WDC. Can you speak to the depth and breadth of participation? And then I've got a second question, but I'll bring that question up at a later time.
All right. I would say roughly 70% of the people in the organization are either work for the government or are in government contracting. I mean, we live in D.C., so that's the reality. Most people are involved in some way with the government. Other than that, I would say it's at least half IT. I became a PMP in 2000, almost 12 years ago. Most of the exam questions and the prep materials were written for construction project management as recently as 12 years ago. And they started getting a bunch of pushback that, hey, that's not the world, more and more IT. So really, it's a fairly recent phenomenon that project management has become the accepted norm in IT. It did not used to be that way. The third one, of course, is large military projects. If you're building a ship or a plane or a space station or you have to put a man on the moon by the end of the decade, and they made it by 1969. That's a project. But I don't know anybody personally that's in that large scale end of it. Pretty much it's IT and construction. But most of our people in the chapter are either government contracting or government and IT based. Does that answer your question?
From a lessons learned perspective, I think a lot of us in IT, you go through a failure when something happens. When something happens with a failure, what's something that, you know, looking back on, do you think is vital? You're like thinking, gosh, why didn't I do that earlier? And it's stuck with you since the beginning of project management.
The courage to speak up. The courage to speak up. I have been involved earlier in my career, hopefully more than at this point, projects that were going south, and I didn't speak up. Because if you're there and you're involved, you can see the signs, and you talk to your other people, they'll see it. But then it's the courage to speak up. That's not the same as the upper level management being willing to listen, but so that I can look myself in the mirror and go to bed at night, the courage to speak up. Most of the projects that I've worked on, and I think this is probably true pretty universally, but if it's not, let me know. Somebody made a promise of how much it was going to cost or when it was going to be done, and so you end up backing into that. Now, every project management book you ever read, every course you ever take will tell you you develop it from the bottom up. What are the tasks that need to be done, and that will tell you how much it's going to cost and how long it's going to take. That's not the way the world works. 100 million was the magic number. So guess what our bid was? 100 million. Or it has to be done by June 30th. So guess what the schedule ends with? And then it's up to me, the project manager, to figure out how to back into that number or to back into that date. That's not the best way to do it. Everybody understands that, but that's the way it works. So the challenge of project management, this isn't specifically on your question, but just general overview of why we get into that situation, is that then it's up to the project manager to figure it out. And if that means that I have to change the staff because I can't afford the rates for the staff that I need, I have to get staff at a lower rate in order to get that work done, figure it out. So it's the courage to speak up when we see things are going south. There's an adage, you know, it takes 9 months for a woman to have a baby. 9 women cannot have a baby in 1 month. And the reason that's an adage in IT project management is because there's such a thing, they call it the mythical man month. If it would take one person 9 months to do this particular piece of work, well, if I throw 9 people at it, they can get it done in a month. Not necessarily. What's the skill sets? What's the ramp up for learning? Then you've got the interfaces between all the work that all 9 are doing. So when things start to happen like that, to bring it up in a way that will communicate appropriately and that you can keep your ethical backbone. That's, I think, the biggest lesson learned for me.
Okay, other questions? I've got 2. We'll start here, and then we'll move over there.
So a previous slide that you had, you showed the PMI organization where you had one side which was operational and one side that was strategic. From your point of view, best practices about the strategic side keeping up with what's operational without getting too down in the weeds, so that the strategic side can plan.
Okay, thank you. Because that one I can talk about because I changed it last year. The problem we had when we had one board was that they didn't have time for strategy. So we split it into 2 boards, and then the year after that, they never talked to each other. That's not going to work. So last year, I made them have 6 meetings together because generally the governance board were the more seasoned people who'd done operational roles and had a concept of how the operation would work, plus they wanted to think forward. The operations board people were sometimes newer in their positions and needed some mentoring. So by putting the boards together in their meetings, we got cross-pollination. The key to make that two-board system work is there has to be cross-pollination. Otherwise, the governance board is in an ivory tower, and the operations board is operating in a vacuum, and those don't work. So there has to be that cross-pollination. Does that answer what you're thinking of? Okay.
Yeah, I work in government project management, and one of the things that my challenge is when I first got in is that it's always when you're dealing with an RFP and the person who actually won, they have a schedule that they won the project with and the actual schedule after we award the project. And then what happens is that my customer is basically going by the schedule on what they won it with. And then basically it took me a long time to get them to understand that now that we have a partner, we have to go and do a sit down and have a conversation about truth. Let's be realistic about what this actually is, what is going to take the resources, and how those projects interconnect with some of the other priorities that's happening inside of the organization. So it's like when I tell, it's about requirements and understanding what you actually want. But at the same token, I think that there is, I don't think the government understands that people are skimming on the schedule in order to try to win the project and not really being very truthful about what it's actually going to take to get the project done.
That problem is not unique to the government. But I agree with everything you said. I would just add that the earlier you can have that conversation, the better. Because the farther down the road it goes, the harder it is to replan or reprogram. So the earlier, the better. But I'm serious. That problem is not unique to the government. I've done commercial contracting. I've done government contracting, both sides. If you have somebody who's reasonable, it's obviously easier. And we won't get into all the other things that can happen. But in general, what you said about how you categorize the issues, I totally agree with. And I would say the earlier you can have that conversation, the better. And it's not always easy.
Okay, next questions? All right, 2 hands. As I make my way around the room, Dave, if you'll answer this one. PMI, Project Management Institute, sponsors a certification program, PMP. Can you share with us what you've discovered to be the value of obtaining a PMP certification and the impacts it has in terms of finding a career within the industry?
I would honestly say that my PMP certification is the single biggest career-enhancing move I made. After that was a security clearance. And because I live and work in D.C. A PMP was absolutely fabulous. It allowed me to get a job up here in 2000. I got my PMP at the beginning of 2000, and then I got a job offer up here. If you remember what was going on in 2000, .com and telecom were flying high, so I got in right on the crest of it. But even since then, it's been very, very helpful. There is an education requirement. There's also a work experience requirement. If you have not been in the field that long, a lot of it is trying to figure out how to package your experience in terms of what they're looking for. So, for example, to pick on you, but you brought up sales before, I would bet you've done projects in sales. You might not have thought of it that way. If you've ever done a new product rollout or you've ever been involved in getting a new customer, that's a project. I've been in sales. I've been involved in that before. So you can be creative. I'm not talking about lying, but you can be creative in terms of how you talk about your experience. I found the PMP certification to be very helpful. There are now other certifications in risk. There's risk. There's also a program management certification. But the PMP is the most widely recognized and still the standard that most organizations that are looking for a certification use. PMP stands for Project Management Professional. And as a PMP, you have continuing education requirements, which they call PDUs, Professional Development Units. The gentleman from the organization mentioned that they do webinars and they do programs where PMPs can get continuing credits. The chapter does that. You saw that on one of my slides also.
Next question.
I see a lot of confusion in our leadership about PMP versus Six Sigma, and I was wondering if you could talk to whether you see where their roles are. Are they complementary? Are they competitors? You know, as I'm trying to explain that, yes, they're both useful skill sets. You get this argument between, well, I'm a black belt and I'm a PMP and I'm better than you are. You know, that kind of conversation.
I don't think there's a conflict. I don't know that much about Six Sigma, so I can't speak in detail, but I don't see a conflict. Just like I don't see a conflict between PMP and ITIL, ITIL. I don't see a conflict there either. Project management is not rocket science. You can build rockets with it, but project management is not rocket science. A lot of it is common sense, and so any way that you get at common sense, whether it's Agile or Six Sigma or ITIL or PMP, it's all useful. I don't see any benefit in trying to stake one claim against another.
How do you deal with over promises from IT projects? And let me just give you an example. Just so you know, all your documents in terms of passport, it's all secure. But we deal with different databases, and they're not talking to each other. So our IT folks have promised us that we will make sure that they all talk and they paint this. And the reality is that that is hard because we had different programs and different requirements, and obviously one database cannot, because of the way that it's built, cannot talk to the other, period. But how do you deal with that, and how do you deal with expectation and management and all of the above? Because sometimes we find that in IT projects in which they're promised us something, or they're under promise. That's also can go either over promise or under promise.
Yeah, over promise and underperform. Yeah,
correct.
Well, that gets to communication within the organization. I've done some work for the State Department, so I have some experience with that. The biggest problem is the organizational silos. And it's true inside the integrators, too. I've worked for some large companies, if you read through my bio real fast there. I've worked for some large companies that are siloed. Government organizations are siloed. Commercial organizations are siloed. That tells you it's human nature. It's not just a government thing. That's a human nature. If people do it everywhere. So it's breaking through those organizational silos, because in order for those databases to talk to each other, to use your example, the people from this organization are going to have to work with these people from this organization. That's the only way it's going to happen. And IT is not a silver bullet. It's a facilitator. Project management is a facilitator, but those groups still have to talk to each other. So I would say it comes down to communication issue.
Next question.
Your check is in the mail.
I'll ask maybe a philosophical question. Well, Ernest mentioned that to bring some personal experience. From my resume, it says I've always managed IT projects on time, on budget, within time, budget, scope. You know, all the three pillars. I've all done that 100%. That's on my resume. Oh. So, you know, I will laugh about it. I mean, the caveat is that it's not against the baseline. You know, it's maybe the version 15. So actually my question is on the flip side, because like you mentioned, the PMBOK 3, right, the latest version, a lot of them are copied from the construction project, for example. The IT is pretty new compared with the project management history. So what's unique about IT project is you know, it's a unique endeavor, and also it's a creative process. And unlike constructing a building, you have the blueprint, you have done it 100 times, then you have to follow the plan. But IT is different. There are a lot of human creativity involved. So my question is, do you think the target, which, ironically, what the PMBOK, mandate or the PMBOK's doctrine, every project needs to be on time, on budget, and the other one. So do you think that, pretty much doomed the IT project because there are creativity involved, and sometimes you got the successful project on the surface, meets all the criteria, but after that, again, another statistics, people spend maybe 70% of the money and time to maintain the IT software or system. So it's not just the tool that you created, it's a matter of look at the whole life cycle, how much it costs to maintain the project. So it's looking at a bigger perspective. Even if one project succeeds or fails, it doesn't mean it's successful or failure for the long term. Sorry for taking too long to ask this question.
So what's the question in there?
The question was, what do you think of the 3 pillars of a project manager? Is that how important do you think that's the goal of a successful project? Or how do you think the failure, how important or how useful a failure might bring to the project?
Having talked to people who do construction management, I think there's plenty of creativity involved in construction management. I think the 3 pillars are still the 3 pillars. I think if anybody who does IT project management says that they're 100% on time and under budget, they're not telling the truth. I don't know anybody who's done more than one project in IT who could say they were on time, under budget, within scope, and be real about it. I think the 3 pillars are the 3 pillars. I think there are a lot of problems in IT project management because scope doesn't get nailed down, and so the requirements are moving, and they are adjusted as they go, and sometimes the window of opportunity is closed before the project is done. There's all sorts of things with that, but that doesn't mean that the principles aren't good. That'd be my answer.
I would add to that, the principles tend to be a barometer that you follow, you track against in the execution of a project, wanting to align to them as closely as possible, knowing that you're never going to be perfect, to David's point, but as close as you can remain to those principles, and then track your difference, adjust your variables, and get back on track and on budget. That is what you would quantify as a successful project. Not that you hit all 3 pillars, precisely, but that you tracked against those pillars as closely as possible. So, question.
To be honest, I didn't have a question, but I just want to respond to, and I'm gonna stand up and speak. Sorry. So I lied. I didn't have a question. But this gentleman here mentioned, the 3 pillars, and those are, in my mind, in my young career, those are tangibles that we all try to reach. But there's also intangibles, like you mentioned earlier. But I think the other intangible is the reputation of whatever company you're representing. Yes, you hit those pillars, but later on, if your project is going to cost more for software upkeep and whatnot, where are the chances that your company is going to get more ongoing work? Or if you want to look at it that way, or if you want to you want to be able to look yourself in the mirror, like much earlier you said, and the truth aspect, how do you face up if you're just sticking to those tangibles? Nowadays with all the capabilities that we're able to communicate, there's other things we have to consider in something such as IT project management. As a young practitioner, or any practitioners, you have to be more. You have to think about the future more than just narrowly, scope, budget, et cetera, et cetera.
One of the things I've learned over the years is that most things are negotiable. And so once I understood that, that helped me manage projects. There are a few things that aren't, and you discover what those are on each project, but many, many times things can be negotiated. And doing work for the future, for future work, for your company reputation, that's also a strong driver. So definitely.
So when you talk about the 3 pillars, there's 2 metrics that are used, in combination to try to assess whether or not you're delivering on those 3 pillars, the CPI and the SPI if you're using earned value. Now, earned value is not really a good tool to tell you if you're earning value, whether or not you're really delivering features to the system that are necessary for adoption. So with that question, embedded in this comment is a question: when do you know that it's a project that's in distress, that's not going to deliver on its real value, its ultimate value, and when should the project manager take the initiative to promote the termination of that project?
I'll address the second part first. Early, often, right away at the beginning. The project manager should have processes in place when the project starts to assess how things are going. And they can be formal and informal. I think earned value works better if you're building a building than if you're building a software program. Because in a building, you can see if the foundation is 25, 50, 75, or 100% done. You can't tell with software. It's more like a black box. So it's harder to do earned value in IT. I know it's mandated on government contracts a lot of times. And so I've seen companies, including the ones I've worked for, go through a number of gyrations to try and generate some earned value data that they can give to the customer. And I'm not convinced that it was accurate. But I think it is very important for the project manager to have processes and procedures in place to assess progress on a project, early, often, right away, formal and informal. That's where my management by walking around helps, and virtual teams hurt, and having a IT technical person who I trust helps. Because those are all different ways to help me understand where the project is at and to get it where it needs to be when it needs to be there. So being able to reach out and touch somebody is a helpful thing.
Just to piggyback on what you were saying, I think one of the things that you have to really focus on is identifying who your stakeholders are early and figuring out how to get them the information that they need based on their understanding as quickly as possible. So in a sense is if you're able to tell the story of what's going good or bad with the project early on, they will start to see the vision that you have about what's going on in the project, and they'll tell you to kill it before you do.
Hi, my name is Angelo Goodwin. I work with DHS, and I'm beside myself here today because the first thing that you brought up was stakeholder management. And I've been saying for probably the last 2.5 years that the most important thing, I think, in managing a project or a program is stakeholder management. Not cost, not schedule, quality, blah, blah, blah. It's stakeholder management because that one category influences more than any other category the success of your project. So I'm glad to hear that that's the message being communicated here today. If you can get a hold of your stakeholders and you can identify their needs, not their wants, you're in the needs satisfaction arena, and you can map those needs to other stakeholders' needs and or conflicts, then you're liable to be very successful in what you're doing. And I don't necessarily say tracking progress stakeholders and communicating that to stakeholders. I always say tracking status, because sometimes you're not succeeding. But you do want to communicate that, because if you communicate the status of the project, then all your stakeholders know what's going on, and they can impact and influence the success or failure of that project. But one thing you can rest assured of is that they also assume some of the responsibility for moving that project forward, because they are informed and they are empowered to make a difference. And they are also, when you have this stakeholder has a conflict with the other stakeholder, and you express that conflict to either, you all, in so many ways, you make them responsible for taking that other stakeholder's interest into consideration and not just ignoring it. And so that helps lead to a successful project as well, and you get to identify some of the additional risks and constraints and conflicts that exist. So I'm glad to hear that we're talking a lot about stakeholder management.
Very nice comment. I think we have time for 2 more questions from the audience, and then we'll need to move on with our agenda. Ma'am?
To piggyback on what he just said about that whole, basically, the requirements for one project I'm working on, I'm an IT contract, working on the IT contract with one of the federal agencies. And what requirements are for one division isn't working for another, and the difference in the success of one over the other, because of the needs of that particular division, is just totally different. And it's kind of interesting that if you try to use the same model, it doesn't always work, and you have to listen to what their needs are. Otherwise, one can be more successful than the other. Thank you.
Yeah, cookie-cutter approach doesn't work. Even though they may seem to be similar, there are still unique parts about each one. Yeah.
I just had a comment. One thing I didn't hear today was planning. I mean, I think if you go back and look at any project that failed, I think you'll find out the biggest reason why it failed, there was no planning. And what I mean by planning is that the project manager or program manager acts as a facilitator for a week or 2 weeks, depending how big the project is, to lay out the WBS, to do a network diagram, to determine what the forward and backward paths are. Because I can tell you from experience that I was brought in on a project in March. It was supposed to be done in December. And the people who were project leaders were on their own track. And when you bring them together, they didn't realize how big a problem they really had. And once they bought into that kind of concept of planning together, they were more successful, because now they knew what each one was. And I think what I've seen so far in the past couple of years is that they appoint a project manager, and what do? They build a project schedule at an MS project, and that's their project plan. And to me, that's not the way to do it. You've got to put more detail. So like once you do that planning scheme, you have to go back and actually write a project plan on each activity, stating why the interval was what it was, who was responsible, who the stakeholder was, and identifying the risk. Because that's always it's like a Bible, so to speak, because anytime there's a problem, you can always go back and say, well, Jim Smith said you would do this, Jim. What's wrong? And then you go from there. But an MS project is not your project plan. It's building a team with a group of project leaders and having them be accountable to you as a program manager. So it's just my experience. That's the key. That's what I've seen so far.
Great, thank you.
I was alluding to that when I mentioned how many times in this country we do ready, fire, aim. I was alluding to that whole thing. I remember reading at one point that in Japan it was flip-flopped. They would spend 70% of their time in planning and 30% in execution. And in this country, we pretty much, as soon as we have something that is even remotely resembling what looks like a deliverable, we'll throw it out there. Microsoft is famous for that. We are all Microsoft beta testers. They've been doing it for years. They get it out there, and then we try it. So, you know, that's kind of an American thing of how we do projects, and it's definitely not best practices.
Hello, I'm Carolyn. I'm one of the kind of newer to this field people here today. And so my question is, I haven't heard much about any of these organizations, but I'm learning more. And what advice would you have for younger professionals that are seeking out mentors and kind of more advanced professionals that to learn from, and how would you recommend to go about doing that?
Unequivocal. Get involved with the local PMI chapter. And you're already here at this, so no, I'll tell you a story. This is true. I got a job through there. I was in the field. I was looking for a new job. We used to pass the microphone around when the dinner meetings were much smaller, and I was the guy that got to do that. And so there was a guy that stood up from a large integrator, said, we're looking for a project manager, such and such a contract, blah, 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 blah. I made a mental note. After the meeting, I made a beeline to the guy's table. He and I talked for 15 minutes. 5 weeks later, I started with the company. So get involved. PMI Washington, D.C. chapter, because the number of people that we have, is a fabulous ground for that. There are mentoring, there's networking, there are volunteer opportunities. A lot of times the networking opens up when you volunteer. See, that's a plug for the board, and you didn't even ask me. But I'm telling you, you volunteer in an organization, and that's when the networking opportunities open up, because people get to know you. They get to see you, see how you work. Because before somebody's going to recommend you, they'd like to know something about you. So I would recommend getting involved, getting active, pick an organization. PMI DC, if you're interested in project management or you're a young project manager, great organization, lots of opportunities to do stuff.
I would agree with that. Within PMI WDC, I have seen networking and mentoring taking place. I will also offer that within our respective alumni groups, ours especially, and I'm getting a nod from the PI group, that many of the board members participate in mentoring opportunities with other members of their alumni groups. It's a wonderful opportunity for seasoned professionals and aged alumni to team up with some of the younger graduates and still even some students and help guide them in the proper decisions that they want to make in their career, so that they got the best paths available for them in their futures. So that was a great question to close on, and I thank you for asking that. So at this time, I want to ask that everybody thank David for his time in joining us. David, I appreciate your comments and your opportunity and willingness to take fired questions of unknown subjects, and I think you handled them very well. So thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right. Last of all, want to acknowledge these groups within George Washington and the individuals respective to within these groups. All of these individuals and groups participated in making today's event possible, and without their combined efforts, we would not have been able to have offered this particular event to the standards by which we sought to achieve. So special recognition to all of them. And finally, David, on behalf of both of the alumni groups and many of our alumni associations that govern the groups within George Washington, we'd like to thank you with this gift. We appreciate your time away from work, and we appreciate the fact that you came and shared with us your experiences within your own personal career and stories from others within the industry that you work with, and in particular the strong plug and by invitation for individuals to pursue considering joining a PMI WDC chapter, and hope to see that that happens through an event like this. So we thank you for your time today.
Thank you very much. Thank you all very much.
All right, to close then, I want to encourage you to seek us out on these social media avenues to stay plugged in to our future events. We are in the process of putting together a schedule of events for the next few months to get us at least through the next half of this year, and you should look forward to seeing advertisements for those types of events. It's also a great way just to stay in contact with members of the organizations and members of the board. If you're interested in participating, volunteering through whatever opportunity you have, time that you have to assist us with future events, we would be happy to hear from you. Otherwise, if there aren't any other closing remarks, then I thank you all for attending. I thank those of us online for joining us today, and I hope that you okay. And I hope that you take the time not to necessarily rush out, but to continue to talk with our guest speaker and our board members and each other before you leave for the day. Otherwise, go safely, and thank you very much for being here. All right, bye.